that you can start enjoying the process a little bit by little bit.
Okay, I'm going to do it this way. And everybody else should too. They would be just as happy as me.
That's how you show up. Like that honesty of being like, oh, right. Like
it was the right thing to do.
And it's like one of those feelings, once you get it, you don't want to let it go.
Connor, my strong-willed child, I started seeking out help when he was about 2.5. He is a very strong-willed, knows what he, like, anytime you try and explain something to him, he knows, like, I know. And so that was really hard. And the people that I had surrounding me, we had like old school versions of taking tools from their toolbox. And it was like, well, if he bites you, bite him back. And if he's doing that, then spank him. And like all of those situations would just like expand. Like it was like, now looking back on it, I can say like, because I spanked him, he said, okay, I can hit you when I get angry. Because, and honestly, like when they say like spank, they're like, you have to do it when you're calm, and then they understand what it is.
It's like there's like all these rules around abuse.
Yeah, and it's like that's
then
never gonna happen. Yeah, but like that's never gonna happen. You're always gonna be angry when you do it, because even if you were calm, you wouldn't do it.
I was drowning. Like it was really, really hard for me. I'd never been around small children. And it was just, God, it was so difficult to just flip a switch and everything is about this kid. And like, I love him to pieces, but I was tired. I mean, I was working midnight shift and taking care of him during the day. I wasn't getting any sleep. And I mean, new parents don't get sleep, but I like really wasn't getting any sleep. And it was so hard. And I started, like, I've always been a very clean person, or mostly clean person. And I just couldn't, like, I just physically couldn't do it anymore. And I had to just be like, you know what? I can't do all this. You know, I can sit here and be mad at Wes because the house isn't clean, but like, he can't do it all either. Like, we all have to pitch in and do it. And sometimes it's not going to be pretty. Sometimes it's just going to be a mess for a while, you know, and we have to be okay with that. So
for me, my 6 going on 7-year-old has some behavioral disabilities and has struggled in school since he was like 1, in multiple centers in multiple places. And I had at the time 2-year-old, I guess, my daughter. So it was like 2 years ago now. So like I had all this, we're in the middle of a pandemic and my son's trying to learn in remote pre-K online. And we were having so many meltdowns and so many power struggles. And I knew that the toolkit I had was not the toolkit that I wanted to have.
And so the reason why I started pursuing this work in general was because I was struggling with my daughter and our relationship, my 5-year-old. She is very strong-willed. We joke around, she says it herself now. She says, I'm a gal who knows what I want. And she does. She very much so does. And I love that about her. And before I started working with Megan, I was not loving that. I was struggling, and we were struggling with the relationship, and we were struggling with how we handled conflict, essentially. And so
I was in survival. We were trying to figure out life, trying to figure out each day how to make it work, and really work on changing the label of my nephew. That was my goal, is I'm trying to keep him survive. And I know there's goodness in there and how to guide them. And I'm like, we just need to survive. We're in survival mode. And
authoritarian, like boundaries. And if you cross my boundaries, too firm, you cross my boundaries, you get the wrath of myself. And so that's where my struggles are. And I have like good, I do really well in certain areas with my kids, sleeping, eating. I kind of always felt pretty comfortable with that, but the other stuff is where I get really, I get triggered. And I think I think the thing that I've learned most is about the connection part. Because I was raised with mind over matter situation. Like if you don't want to do something, well, you need to do it. Just just do it. Like you
Suck
can
it
do
up.
it, do it, suck it up. And in the nicest way possible. I love my parents. I was very lucky. They were loving parents, but they also were working from tools, and they decided to use different tools than their parents, which they did. So I'm working on top of that, which is fun. But it's still really hard, and not having the punishments.
Before that, we talked a lot about like how we're gonna raise our kids and stuff like that. And we had this idea that we wanted to be gentle parents. We didn't really know what that meant. We just knew we didn't want to spank, and we didn't want, there to be fear in the house. And so we didn't really have a good like barometer for that or whatever. So we were just kind of winging it. And I think both of us are pretty permissive in our own ways. Linus got into four pre-K, like the year before kindergarten, and he actually had to like learn letters and numbers and do schoolwork, and he was not having it at all. And he would go into school and throw these fits and refuse to do his work, which he still does, but it's better. And the teachers were just, I don't know if they were not able to handle it, or if, they had their own stuff going on. But anyway, it basically came down to you're not doing enough as parents to make sure that your kid is behaving in school, which you have no control over really because you're not even there.
Say that again.
But I mean, it got to such a point where it was like, this is breaking me. Like I was crying every morning trying to get him to school because he would fight me, and it would be like this hour-long saga from wake up to school.
That I didn't sign up to get in to like really heal my relationship with my mom or, my inner child. And yet that has been a big part of the reality of the work, is that because it's so much about me and breaking down the messages I heard or things I was taught and interrupting those like automatic things to like take a big step back and see what's happening, to do connection instead of rushing through, it really has changed. I'm able to genuinely not fake it, not like rip. I can go into situations that I used to be like, I would have flipped at a second.
Yeah.
I'd be like, gosh, like just stop saying that. That's off limits. Like that was where I was at because I just didn't have any more resources, and things felt, at least in that dynamic, felt threatening. It didn't feel like I was getting support. And my son was 4, but he'd already been out of several schools because of like biting when he was little and just like all these things. And we were trying to get assessments, and it just felt lonely and hard.
You should yell, hit, spank, and like that's what we did. And it didn't work. It didn't work for me because we would progress always to the yelling, the hitting, the spanking, and then it wouldn't work. And then it didn't work for her. It was super obvious it didn't work for her because she was feeling bad. Everybody's feeling bad, defeated, like this just doesn't work. And I think that's where we got to the point of seeking out like that. I was like, I got to do something different. I can't, this is not working. This is not working in any way, shape, or form. And so as I started diving into some of this, it was, realizing that this whole child perspective, like it doesn't have to be like this. I don't have to yell. And I very rarely do yell anymore. And I don't even remember the last time I spanked. Like, I don't even remember it. But that was like that was an every night thing. And bath times were torturous for us. And bath times are enjoyable now. And,
what I thought it was going to be, of course, is like a tricks, not like a tricks, but like, okay, this is, your kid is behaving this way. So these are some strategies you could possibly use. And then almost like a multiple choice, but it wound up being an essay. And it's like, oh, I'm not good with essays, but it's like one of those essays where it's like, take your time. Write a sentence, write the starting. If you don't know the starting, do the body. Then come back to the top and you're like, that's an option? I didn't even know I could do that. And it's just realizing that nothing has to be anyway if you don't want it to be anyway. You get to design. What I found out it is basically you get to design, but it's mostly with you. And that's the hardest part, you know, because it's just like, I'm very good at, okay, like this is the container. You can only have orange juice in the container. And they're like, no, you can have whatever liquid. And you're like, okay, I can. And then it's almost like a conversation with yourself. Any liquid can go into this container. Any liquid can go into this container. And it's just like kind of being okay with not being okay. Like, I know you want to have milk in this container, and it is okay. I'm going to step back because I'm working through some things, and then that's okay. And just really understanding as well is boundaries are good. I've always thought, oh, I don't want to tell them no because I want to be the cool parent, until it's like, but then I notice if you wait, then it's like you're not the cool parent, and now they're ultra mad at you because you sent mixed signals. And just really processing kind of through that.
Was boundaries. So like he's been seeing me set boundaries with the kids, and so the other day he's in charge of breakfast, and the kids are in charge of setting the table, and there was a lot of whining going on, and they have also their like morning routine that they have to do, and there was a whole bunch of like whining. And so the other day he set the boundary by himself without consulting me, which was, I thought, was really nice. It was a change. He said, kids, I'm cool doing breakfast. I enjoy doing it for everybody, but the whining I can't handle anymore. So from now on, when I hear the whining, I'm going to be removing myself into the room and let me know when you're done, and then I will continue on my way. And him saying that, I don't think that we've had a problem all week with, but he's like setting those boundaries and being clear about them have been a game changer. But it takes time to formulate the plan inside of your head, and then to actually take action on it and then follow through on it. And I think one of the other things that I would say is that the more simple it is, the better.
Learn to stop and think about what I'm doing instead of just before I would allow this tension to build in my body, and I could feel it, just like bees. Sometimes I refer to it as like bees in my body. And I just have been able to stop, take it, just breathe. And I actually have noticed that it really just calms the whole situation down. It's not just me when I stop and say, I'm just gonna sit back and breathe here instead of allowing the bees to take over. It's, okay, it's everybody involved kind of calms down.
When this really became, it's not therapy, but the amount of times I talked to my therapist about what we were talking about in parenting coaching calls overlapped a lot, because we're talking about what our triggers are. We're talking about how we're interacting with the people we care the most about. So it is raw and vulnerable, and there are ahas as you're like, oh, the amount of things that I realized I was just reacting to my reflection was a little startling at first, but then was like, okay, I have the opportunity to love me in the way that I wanted to be loved. I have the opportunity to pick up new tools and to practice it differently. My mom invested, I know she did a lot. She did a lot. And I can say that now. I will say that 2 years ago, I was not feeling that. I was really resentful. I was in a place of a lot of hurt. And our relationship isn't perfect now. Boundaries exist. I think I can see more clearly. It's not so one-sided from I can see that behind the curtain is also someone doing the work, and that she carried me and my brothers have relationships that she and her sisters don't have. So she invested in tools and she made changes. And so now I can keep moving the needle forward, and I am not and will not be perfect. So my children will carry that forward if they choose to have their own.
Yeah.
But it's not even the children. As so many people have said, I use this work in all of my relationships.
We're doing allowances now, but we're doing it totally different. And it's a mind shift, because maybe the way that I had learned wasn't right, or it didn't focus on my child, or it didn't focus on me, or it didn't focus on the right things. And so now that we're doing it differently, it is working, and it is, setting up clear boundaries and communicating and listening and respecting. And I now respect my child, and my child now respects me. It's a mutual respect. And also, sometimes she has a bad day. Sometimes I have a bad day. It's the reality of life. So the grace in that as well.
It's like, it's not the kids, it's me. And that's the hardest thing, is it's like, wait, and it reminds me of that TikTok, am I the problem? And it's just realizing that I'm not the problem, but I don't need to answer every question. Like to do more of the working them through versus giving them, maybe instead of giving them the whole meal, teaching them how to make the whole meal. So then they're able to do it.
Yeah.
And that involves stepping outside of my comfort zone. And not everything is black and white. That's a little tricky. I'm still working through that. The process of, okay, let's figure out where we can meet in the middle. And realizing when I meet in the middle that they might not agree, but just holding space that we might not agree and being okay with that. And sometimes that's hard.
And now it just always feels like I'm in the right place, because that's how you present it. It's like, you are doing it right. You already are a great parent. They're still alive at night. Like, you're doing great. Period, point blank. And also, like, the fact of the matter is that kids, it's so crazy how forgiving they are. And like at the next day, like, we had the worst week last week, literally the worst in my eyes. And I got Connor, he got, like, in Europe, it's the school backpack is like the biggest thing ever. And don't ask me how much I spent on it, because it makes me want to throw up. But he doesn't get a lot of new stuff. So we got him the backpack. And yesterday he was like, this is the best thing ever. You are the best mom ever. And before this program, I would fill up my tank with all of that love. And I'm like, I did this. This is fantastic. And I'm the best mom. I know that I'm the best mom. And then the next day, something bad would happen and it would go all away. But now it's like, I'm just here. I'm like, thank you so much for the extra love. I appreciate it. I see you. I'm so happy that you're happy, that you're happy. But like, I am myself and I need to keep myself standing. So I'm not having to wait for that next gush of love.
Okay, clearly I'm flipped and I cannot speak from a kind place right now. And I might say something, I try and like not do that around the person I'm pissed at, but I might do it, at my husband. He knows that that's what I'm talking about. It's not like directed at him, but I've really learned to just like be like, okay, I'm not gonna like anger out on people at work who know this person. I'm gonna take it, I'll talk to my husband or somebody, a friend who works in the industry or something, like, like who understands
a safe
kind of-
space.
right. Yeah. And that's just a lot of self-control that I did not have before. So so little things like that. And then just like practically, as far as my job goes, I have learned to validate people's feelings. Like, they're calling and they're flipped and they're probably going to say something really rude to me. And I have to be able to just let it go and, and be like, I'm really sorry that you're having to deal with this. It's very upsetting, but like, how can I help you?
Kept envisioning the same framework of, what do I want my adult relationship to look like? What do I want the relationship to look like in 6 months? I'm going to show up messy and imperfect. And she's told us that's okay. And so I'm going to trust that that's okay. Screen time reference, like, you're like, you had to like, we're here again. It's the same as other people have had around bedtimes. Like, how long do you want to do this for? Apparently I've picked 2+ years. Like, we're in a different place with screen time, but it's still
when it's time, it'll be time.
Right. And it doesn't mean that because I haven't figured that out, we haven't made all this progress and all this like repair and connection with our kids, that had I said, well, I can't do it all 100% perfectly. And I think that
Mhm.
that's the other thing, the perfectionism angle of like wanting to be able to do it all at the same time and manage it all.
It's how I show up. 1,000 times more how I show up than how she shows up, because she's a 5-year-old kid and she's going to show up how she shows up, and that's 100% perfect and appropriate as long as she's staying safe. But it's more about how I show up, because if she's having a hard time, do I show up to help extinguish the flames, or
Mhm.
am I like igniting her on fire and now she's just this raging flames?
Mhm.
I want to show up to help extinguish, to
Mhm.
help teach her, or to model.
Mhm.
It's way more calming for me. I'm going to tap into the things that work for me and helping her tap into the things that work for her.
Mm.
In one of your classes, and I think it was the very, very first, you had us do, like, we rated our kids, like intensity, persistence, sensitivity.
Mhm.
And so I rated my daughter. Now she was high on everything. And then I was like, well, wait a second. Like, what? Where am I? And I rated myself, and I am high on everything. And I'm like, oh my God, we're like almost the same. And so, like, that was a moment of awareness for me to be like, okay, well, what do I do to help calm myself down? And I don't know that I ever learned coping ways to calm myself down. And so I am now
Mm.
learning those through some of these groups and some of this practice, and Monday morning intention specifically, because I don't know that I learned that. And so how do I show up for my daughter? I don't even have the skills and the tools. And so um,
Mhm.
that's a future.
It's bedtime. That used to be like my weakness, because I'm like, I need them to be sleeping. I need them to lay down. I need them. And then since then, they try. They definitely do try. And I'm like, okay. And then so now I just try to have focus. Like, okay, if there's a podcast I want to watch, or there's a TV show, like there's like I try to make sure I have focus so I don't go in to the bait. And then if I do go in because one of the rules are broken, like my nephew hits the cup, and I was like, if you hit the cup, then I take it. So I'll go get the cup and then leave, and then go back to the show, because I noticed, because he tries very hard, but I'm like, I try to watch my show even harder. About this whole mermaid that I keep telling you about, where I
Yes.
want to go in and rescue him, and I'm like, I'm here to help you. Let me. It's a mermaid. Like, it's just like, and to me that just keeps triggering. Like, why are you saying a mermaid?
Yeah.
Like, you can barely get from one side to the other, but
Yeah.
you're trying to save a mermaid. So it's
Yeah. What Tisha is saying is this metaphor that she's come up with is, she was like, oh, I realized that I'm trying to save a mermaid from the ocean, where mermaids belong in the ocean, but I'm not comfortable in the ocean. And so I keep getting tricked or triggered into fix and rescue, where I'm trying to fix the mermaid's environment, where the mermaid, no, the mermaid is meant to be here. How can I connect to the mermaid and validate the mermaid to make the mermaid feel safe in their environment?
yeah.
Yeah. And whenever you say it, I'm like, oh, that's so good, because it is. It's like, how easy is it to think like, oh no, this is bad for you, let me come in and change it to make it better for
Right.
you, versus being like, all
Just
right,
holding space.
I'm just here to connect to you.
Right.
First by connecting to me.
Right. And realizing my skill set before I
Mm.
then try to go into whatever it is.
Mhm. Welcome in, and truly just whenever it's the best next time, the right time to take the next step, the best time for you, like it's there and it's ready.
You can't force it either.
Yeah, no.
But also the knowledge to know that, like, that you can walk away from it and it will still be there, and you can still go back and look at it again. And I think that's powerful, because then it relieves all the pressure off of, like, I'm not doing this right. Like, it's okay. You maybe right now this is the right that you can do, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Of amazing wins, and I don't know. I'd be interested to know where I would be right now without it.
Mm.
But I thank my past Danny for where we are now. It's not perfect.
Mm.
It ain't perfect, but it is. It feels better.
Alone, new parent, scared, overwhelmed, drowning, what would you want to tell her?
let that shit go.
Mm.
Just take care of yourself and everything will fall into place because you are able to make sure that your needs are being met. And if you make sure your needs are being met, then your baby will be great and your marriage will be great. I mean, not perfect, but you got to take care of yourself first because nobody else will. And that's just how it works. You can't pour from an empty cup. But I can tell you, I probably would not have heard myself say that.
Yeah. So what would you say? What would you hear in that moment?
I don't know that I would probably hear that, but I would be saying to myself, well, that's just not practical. I don't need, like
Distance. Distance.
I'll be all right. It's fine. I can do it.
Uh-huh. So what would your higher self say to that person?
Probably, okay.
I'll wait.
Oh, wait.
I'll wait.
Yeah. Talk to me in a couple of years.
I see you, boo-boo, and I love you so much. I'll love you so much that I'll wait.
Yeah.
His year, if we hadn't been in this, I don't even know what it would have looked like, because we made sure he felt safe at home and have been doing this work. And my spouse he was coming to calls, like, we can speak the same language. We're tapping each other in and out when we're flipped. Like, we're really like trying to figure out this dynamic, and it's beautiful and it's hard and it's messy. But I definitively know that our child knows that he is safe and he is loved for exactly who he is.
I just realized at one point, like, I need this more so for me. This was more for me. This is more for my peace and my calm in my household, and my children and everyone else around me will 1,000 times benefit from this, because if I'm showing up to life happier, I mean, like, I'm enjoying this. We have so many kids right now. We're on vacation. We have so many kids. We're all in this one house, and like, I am enjoying parenting, and I'm enjoying parenting other people's kids, even if they're not doing this. Like, I have opportunities to look and like practice, like, in my head things, and like, how would I have done with this, or what would I have done? And I get to practice with the nieces and nephews, and like, I see the connection I can make with them too. And it's really cool. Like, it's different and it's cool, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm enjoying being a parent again.
Is broken crowns will still color, and just really being okay with, okay, I'm broken. Let me figure out how I can heal it instead of putting a Band-Aid over it. Because before this program, I think I told Megan, my emotions, I would put in the box and I'm like, I'm gonna deal with that later. I'm gonna deal with these emotions later. And it's just like, that's not possible. Because then it just explodes instead of going through it, which is a lot tough. It's tougher than just trying to skip over it. But in the long run, it's great, because then you show your kids, if you're taking care of yourself, that also it's important for them to take care of their self, and you're leading by example.
This process, this journey, the Clear and Kind, the class pass, the being a part of Megan's world, is that you can start enjoying the process a little bit by little bit. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, a lot most of the time, which is what we're working for. It's life.
It's so funny how we can just like, okay, I'm going to do it this way, and everybody else should too. They would be just as happy as me.
And then the narrator says, no, they were indeed not as happy as she was. Because
she cried in the bathtub for an hour.
And that was okay too.
And I think that that's a beautiful way to wrap, because that's how you show up. Like, that honesty of being like, oh, right. Like, sometimes it takes that moment of interacting with someone to see it reflected back as like kind of silly and trivial. And not to minimize how hard it is to break those patterns, but just like you're saying, you're like, yeah, like I could control that. It's just like, oh, right. And then I release this guilt or this like pressure of someone else like casting judgment, because you're able to help us see so much clearer what we could kind of intuitively get to, but not the whole meat of like why it was rubbing us the wrong way.
Right.
And then you break it down and you're like, oh, right. And then you can articulate it better to then have those conversations with other people and be like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's what felt right. It was the right thing to do. And that always feels right. Sometimes it's hard though, figuring that out when you have been, not allowed that space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, because I think in life, it's very hard finding safe space. So I'm like, when you do find them, you have to keep them. Because I find most spaces that are not safe, I feel like it's like almost contingent upon, okay, now I told you that, and now I'm gonna tell you something, instead of just holding space. And it's like one of those feelings, once you get it, you don't want to let it go. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, this happened. Like, the first people you want to share with Marco Polo. Let me pull up my Marco Polo. And even on battery saving mode, you can have Marco Polo. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I love that you know that.
Yeah.
Danny, thank you so much for coming and sharing.
Thank you for holding this space.
Well, Jessica, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, so much. All right. We will end there. Thank you, Tisha. I cannot wait to see you again soon.